cows, basically, like they are just part of the crown themselves, and they're not there to work for you. And I've been to court 14 times by myself with the government. 14 dismissed charges.
Wow.
Okay? It's my first time I got charged for fishing lobster, fishing bass, and the first time they seized everything. They took all my boats, my net, everything, my motor and all that. Second, and this was not even on the water, right on the shore. I went at night, set up my traps, set up my nets, get caught again, and they took everything. Now this time they took me into court. But when I went to court, I wasn't allowed to speak. No witness is allowed, no expert witness were allowed. You're not allowed to take the stand for your own defense. And they all, like just to add on, I wasn't allowed to talk about Constitution. I wasn't allowed to talk about Aboriginal right. I wasn't allowed to talk about the land where I was fishing, the Great Grand of Caracat. And I even told the judge during that trial, I told him like about the BNA Act. That is the embryo of Canada. Everything evolved around the BNA Act. The BNA Act is not valid as a constitution for Canada. Canada has no constitution. And I was able to bring her the paper. She said, "Where did you get this?" "In your book of constitution, there, Your Honor. Your first turned red, she took the door, flew me." But just to make the story short, that judge was in conflict of interest with the matter she was dealing with at that time. I acknowledged and I brought up the conflict of interest to her, and I showed her the paper. "Is that you, Your Honor? Is that your face here in this CBC News report?" Her face was redder than red. But she did not step down from the case, charge me anyway. Anyway, right now, I went to the Court of Queen's Bench. At the Court of Queen's Bench, the Crown and the judge are arguing that the law of conflict of interest doesn't apply to a judge. Law applies to anybody in Canada, right? But us Aboriginal people, we're not Canadian. And that's something we need to tell them, right? Then I took, after the Queen of Court's Bench was done, I went to appeal court. Now the appeal court of New Brunswick is telling me that they have no jurisdiction on lower court in the province. That's exactly the role of the appeal court, to deal with lower court in the province. So that gives me the step up to the Supreme Court. So now my case is pending at the Supreme Court. I called the Supreme Court and I got an email from them that my case is over in the department where they're going to have a review for, because when you make an appeal to the Supreme Court to be heard. So that's where it's now right there. Now we're going to find out in a later date if they're going to put a roll on it and if it's going to go in front of the judge. But basically, you're looking at a Mi'kmaq man that had no right to speak, that has a charter that was supposed to protect him, Aboriginal right that was supposed to protect him as well. On top of it, I was fishing on the King's Grant, which is different than some people don't know, but fishing the King's Grant cannot be void. And the King had given that parcel of land prior to the creation of the province to 34 families, which is one of my descendants. So anyway, if the case goes into the court, because I'm a natural descendant of the Mius from Nova Scotia. So they signed the Treaty of 1752, 1761, they signed on it. So basically, I'm a Treaty Indian. But how they gonna solve it? We have a case, this case is pending in the Supreme Court. It's a strong case. And the thing is, having a judge in conflict of interest to charge you, plus a human that was denied the fairness of a fair trial, which is guaranteed by our charter. So yes, we need to stand together as one, and I don't like to talk about division saying status Indian, non-status, all preserved, in reserve, like that's all colonial act, okay? If you have one drop of blood as Mi'kmaq, you're Mi'kmaq. That's it for me, that's the way I look at it. And the best way to look when you go into court, and I wanna make sure that you all know this, when you go to the court, one of the big tools they're gonna use, okay? If you haven't made a request that you're gonna be raising constitutional question into that trial, they will not allow you to talk about constitution at all. It's gonna be denied by the judge, and she's gonna lean over with the crown. And even if you build a document this high for your constitutional question, they're gonna tell you it's incomplete, not accessible. So basically, you know, like it's just how we go around these two things, right? And I know myself, if my Supreme Court is heard and I win, the judge that denied me and violate my human's right, she's gonna be action on her after, for sure. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.